Welcome to another episode of Elevating Property Management. I'm Colin Douthit, and I am honored here today to be joined by Dan Lewkowicz. Dan, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. Very excited. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so Dan has a great background in brokerage and management, and started off with some single family, multifamily, and has moved up into the commercial world, whether it's triple net leases or working, with brokering deals on some other types of commercial products. So, Dan, give us a little bit about your background, and then we'll dive into it.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Dan Lewkowicz. I'm currently a commercial real estate broker specializing in triple net investment sales. So what that means is that I sell your properties that are typically leased out to national tenants. You can think about Walgreens, Rite Aids, CVS's, Starbucks. We also do a lot of quick service restaurant. Just sold a Wendy's property here in Michigan about 10 days ago. I've got 4 Burger Kings listed in Montana. We do a lot of medical office. I've got a medical office building listed in Iowa under contract right now. Do a lot of automotive like tire stores and industrial fulfillment centers. And then we also do your multi-tenant shopping centers, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later because those can be actually management intensive. Got my start in single family property investment, renovation, and resale, and worked a lot in the residential space as an investor and a deal syndicator. And then over the years, I shifted more towards the passive space of being a commercial real estate broker. Through the years of doing that, I developed a lot of systems and strategies that really work for me. And I have been approached by a number of people who were looking to get into the space of commercial real estate brokerage. So myself and my partner put together a course called the CRE Pro course, which we're actually launching here in just a couple of days. And we have brokerages all around the country that are signing up to have us train and mentor their newer brokers to help them do what we do, which is to close commercial real estate deals.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Super diverse background, and love the way that you worked up from the single families up to multifamilies and just kind of gone through that completely. So, I guess kind of let's take a step back in time and focus on some of the single family properties and and what you were doing with those. So that's kind of where you got your start. So what were you doing in the single family space?
Yeah, good question. So in the single family space, I was primarily involved in the purchase, the renovation, and the resale of the property. So we would use all different types of methodologies to acquire the properties. We would flex our relationships with banks and lenders to buy properties that were off market or REO property. We would do a lot of boots on the ground, literally door knocking and finding properties direct from owners. We would work with a lot of wholesalers, work with a lot of agents, and get a lot of off-market deals, purchase them. I would raise the capital or utilize my own capital, renovate the properties, and then resell them either to end users, right, to young couples who were moving into these homes, or often to investors.
Okay.
Also, involved in a lot of single and multifamily syndication, where I wouldn't necessarily do the deal, but I would bring the deal to a colleague of mine who would then take that property and put it in a portfolio, syndicate that whole portfolio, manage the portfolio, and provide a return to their investors.
Okay, great. So one of our, that you kind of touched on a couple of our main customers right now is really the investor that is buying, single families, whether it's their first one or they're trying to, acquire and build a portfolio over time, or if we're looking at the multifamily, dealing with, again, individuals or a couple partners buying something, or dealing with a lot of syndicators as they try to scale their portfolio. So when you were working in that syndication space and, passing that off, what were your interactions kind of with property management? Were you interacting with property management on that level?
So my involvement in those deals would end when the transaction took place and the deal went to the syndicator. However, these are my good friends and buddies, so I've heard every single horror story there is. And what I will tell you is that it's essential to have a good property manager. I mean, it can be the difference between a deal that works and a deal that doesn't work, right? It can be the difference between deferred maintenance that turns into a huge problem, or something that the property manager catches and saves the investor a tremendous amount of capital. There's a lot of other reasons to have a good property manager. And then this carries over, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, this carries over to my experience as a broker now, brokering multi-tenant, commercial properties that have property managers. Same thing. If you've got an investor, right, or a fund manager, and their property manager isn't a good property manager, not only is it going to cause a lot of headaches, but that deferred maintenance may cause problems when it comes time to sell the property, right? Yep. The owner may now have to sell at a discount, or all of a sudden may have to, have a ton of capital expenditure before they can sell the property that was unforeseen. And, everybody knows that at the end of the day, these properties are investment vehicles, right?
Mhm.
One of the most important things is your net operating income. So if there's a problem with the management of the property, you can have significant bleeds in your cash. And at that point, you've really compromised the integrity of the actual asset.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, and we see that a lot when we take over these properties, right? We do, since we have construction in house, we get brought in on a lot of turnaround properties where that management has not existed, or it's been self-managed poorly, or is taken over by poor property managers, and tons of deferred maintenance, safety, health issues, you name it. We've seen it all. We ended up taking over a building while it was under contract. It was like a week away from closing, and the back wall fell off. It was an old brick building, and about a story and a half of brick fell off. And we were
Oh
like,
man,
you can't make it up. And luckily, it happened.
somebody forgot the brick ties.
Yeah, well, the foundation was settling, and we knew that there was some structural work down there. But the buyers were so thankful that it happened when they were under contract, so they could retrade on the price. It's like, you just had
Yeah,
$100,000 happen there. Like, how we gotta handle this. And bringing the appropriate property management, whether it's single family, multifamily, multi-tenant, is huge. And there's probably a lot of overlap between multifamily and multi-tenant commercial, right? Rent collection, occupancy, deferred maintenance, driving the NOI, because that's, the NOI is going to make or break the deal on the resale
yeah.
or the refinance. You've seen good, you've seen bad, I've seen good, I've seen bad in terms of the property management world. What do you see, the good property managers doing that are differentiating themselves? Because our goal here is to, elevating property management, right? We want to bring what works to the forefront so that we can make property management an industry that has a good reputation instead of a bad
Yeah.
one, or so
Yeah.
that the people that want to rise can rise and continue to be better.
Yes, I'd say it's really two things. Number one, it's good, clean books. As an investment sales broker, I'm constantly underwriting multi-tenant deals. And in order to underwrite the deal, I have to look at the rent roll and the profit and loss report. And it takes me about 3 seconds to know if the person that's putting together the profit and loss report and rent roll is doing a good job managing the property, because they've got clean records, right? Everything is clean. Everything is easy to understand. If a broker or the owner wants to know what's going on with the property, they should be able at any point to take a snapshot and see financially what is the health of this property,
Mhm.
right? I've seen other deals on the other side where even the owner has no idea what's going on because the property manager doesn't know what's going on. And as a broker, I mean, look at it this way. As a broker, a lot of those deals are not saleable because we can't verify the rent roll. We can't verify the T12. We can't verify the profit and loss report. So it's so essential that your property manager is on top of the books and records for your asset. That's very, very, very important. So I think that's number one.
Mhm.
Number two is, what if I would go and tour the property? What would it look like?
Mhm.
Right? Is it clean? Is it well maintained? Is there deferred maintenance? Are there
Mhm.
cracks in the pavement? Is the roof on its way out? And now, granted, in all fairness to the property manager, many times it's the investor that's saying, okay, I understand, right?
Yeah.
There's some deferred maintenance, but I'm not spending that money. But at least a property manager is that liaison to say, hey, here's the reason you do want to spend the money. Here's the reason you do want to take care of this now. So, good books and records and a clean, well-run property, those are, in my mind, from a commercial perspective, two of the signs of a solid property manager.
Mhm. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. The clean books, and I completely understand it, right? Because you're coming at it from a different side than we work with a lot of times. But when we get brought in for the due diligence phase, like, we need to see clean books,
Mhm.
or just so we can understand, so we can give guidance, like, hey, here's where there's opportunities for improvement, or we have no idea what's going on out there, right?
Right.
It's the term around our office is dumpster fire, right? Oh, this is just a complete dumpster fire, right? Like, we have no idea what's going on out there. We don't have leases, we don't have books, like, everything's, leases don't match the rents that are being paid. So now that they're paying the higher rent than their lease says, but we don't have a renewed lease, are we just going, it's a verbal contract now? So
Right.
go with the higher rent. And if they keep paying it, then we've got a verbal contract. So it's that sort of thing that we see. And I'm glad that you brought up books, because I've asked that question a lot. And, that's not an answer that we hear very often. I think it's the first time that I've heard it. When I think about that, it's, everything hinges on the success of that property, right? And then being
Yeah.
able to, sell the property or make money as the owner.
And as a broker, I've turned sellers away and said, "I'm sorry, I can't sell this property." "Oh, well, I collect the rent in cash every month. I mean, can I just, write a receipt?" "No, no one's going to buy that."
Hmm.
Or, "Oh, well, the books aren't really clean, or, we don't really know what happened here." Listen, at the end of the day, you might think that your property's in good shape right now financially, but if I go to sell that property for you, I'm going to look at your past years of profit and loss reports and rent rolls. And if I see that there's a discrepancy, or there's something in there that is not, verifiable, for example, that property, I can't just say, "Oh, well, this is the person's word. Let's take it at face value. Let's put it out on the market."
Yeah.
That's a significant. It's almost like, I have a background in title. I almost look at it as like it's a cloud on the title, right?
Mhm.
Because if you don't have good books and records going back, if your property manager didn't do their job, it's not enough for them to do their job right now. They have to have done their job for a while, because when I go to underwrite that property, if I see that there's something missing, that's a huge red flag, and any investor is going to have a problem with that.
Yeah, you're 100% right. One of the things that I tell people, right, when I'm having these conversations is my goal with property management is to be respected, to be a profession, because we're dealing with tens to hundreds of millions of dollars
Mhm.
worth of assets. We're dealing with people's biggest financial investments. We're dealing with people's retirement. And we need to be aware of that. And we need to hold ourselves to a level of professionalism that accountants do, that bankers do.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people don't think of us in that realm, or the industry as a whole in that realm. They want that sort of those deliverables. They don't know that they always want them, but that's the level that we need to be performing at as an industry, so that we can help the owners, and we can hold ourselves to a higher standard. And then also it makes it easier
Sure.
for you guys.
Absolutely. No
So
question about it.
yeah, we've got a lot of responsibility there. So when you go from a multifamily to a multi-tenant property, right? Both multiple leases across a structure or set of structures. What's the biggest difference that you see that multi-tenant commercial may not have to deal with that multifamily does, or kind of vice versa? What's the biggest difference that you see in terms of the management and the
Yeah,
success
good
of those
question.
properties?
So, I mean, things like, broken toilets, or things like doors that don't close, or, things like that. On a multifamily, it's much more management intensive. A lot of the lease structures for multi-tenant allow for, or I wouldn't say allow, they require for the tenant to be responsible for certain things. Like, for example, all of their furniture, fixtures, and equipment, also known as FFE, is the responsibility of the tenant. The
Mhm.
tenant usually pays for it and puts it in there, and the tenant has to upkeep it. Depending on the lease structure, the majority of the expenses inside of the actual building are going to be the responsibility of the tenant. So in many multi-tenant retail centers, you might have things like the parking lot, the roof, the structure, the exterior lighting. That's the responsibility of the landlord. But pretty much everything else is the responsibility of a tenant. And in many cases, the lease actually allows for what we call triple net reimbursements, which is where the actual tenant will reimburse the landlord for the cost that he's expending for things like parking lot maintenance, exterior lighting, grass cutting, landscaping, even management fees. So in many leases, the management fee, it's not direct, the tenant doesn't have interaction with the property manager. They don't hire the property manager, but there is a reconciliation where the tenant is actually responsible in many cases for all of those expenses. So I
Mhm.
would say that you're dealing with a business that's running their business. You're not dealing with a tenant that might be complaining about something that is or is not a legitimate complaint. So I would say in general, it's less management intensive.
Mhm.
However, there are going to be different types of management. There's going to be things like the grounds maintenance, and taking care of the facade of the building. They're going to be making sure that they're managing their snow contracts, and sprinklers and this and that. So
Mhm.
it's similar, but I would say it's different, and it's less intensive than multifamily management.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully, maybe it's easier to collect money from a business than a person sometimes.
Yeah,
Depends on
that
the
and that
situation.
that that is also true as well, because think about, that's another advantage to that aspect of commercial real estate, is that the leases are guaranteed. If it's a national tenant, the leases are guaranteed by the corporation.
Oh, very nice.
So the landlord is actually getting, we call it mailbox money or coupon clippers. They're getting a check directly from the tenant. So oftentimes the property manager may not even be collecting the rent. Now, if they're smaller mom and pop stores, maybe the property management company will be collecting the check. But typically in these shopping centers, you're dealing with a large national tenant that's just, they've got a whole department that's just there writing checks.
Hmm. That's great. That's great. Yeah, that can make a big difference.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. The FFE thing, I know there's, triple net leases, and, that's very different than what we have to deal with in our world, where we're responsible for almost everything. The triple net leases sound like they're gonna be wonderful
Mhm.
working with those. With the placement of tenants on the
Yeah.
commercial side, I know there's also a big difference on that as we look at working with investors that are looking for multi-use buildings, where they'll have residential on top and then commercial on the bottom. Talk about the tenant placement differences that you've seen in regards to on not national, but let's take a small strip center for instance. What's the
Yeah.
difference that you see there?
So typically, an individual will hire a leasing broker. So I specialize in investment sales, which means that I actually sell the real estate,
Mhm.
and the tenant or business comes along with it. So one owner will own the shopping center, or one owner will own the Burger King. I come in, I market and sell the shopping center, or I market and sell the Burger King, and the tenant is what provides the cash flow. Now, a leasing broker, which is different than what I do, they specialize in the placement of the tenant. So you've got, on the leasing brokerage side, you've got landlord rep and you've got tenant rep, and then you've got some firms that do both. So a landlord rep is out there pounding the pavement trying to find tenants to fill a space. A tenant rep is out there pounding the pavement trying to find spaces to fill with their tenant.
Mhm.
So that aspect is it's very different, because the property manager per se is not the one that's filling the vacancies.
Mhm.
The leasing broker is the one who's filling the vacancies.
Yeah, correct. And we've got relations with a leasing broker here in town, so that when we do get in those situations, like, okay, owner, we're not going to take a lease up fee on this because that's going to be paid to the leasing broker. And
Right.
it's completely different. I mean, here, we syndicate our listings out to a bunch of different rental websites, Facebook, etc. It's a completely different ballgame to get those leased up,
Sure.
and the fee structure is much different.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
There's a large portion paid up front for a longer term lease as well. Besides, you've got your course coming up. Kind of what's next for you and your all's company and your growth?
Yeah, so the CRE Pro course that we created, which is designed to teach people everything they need to know to be a top commercial real estate broker, whether that's investment sales like I do, leasing like we just mentioned, multifamily like we've touched on. It's really a cool course. It provides a really strong and stable foundation for someone to know everything they need to know to be successful. We also offer some higher level consulting and mentorship programs where we actually hold the hands of the new brokers, and we step in and provide that actual like senior broker position of mentoring the new agents. So I'm really excited as that grows. I have a show called Dan on Top of all things commercial real estate, and we've produced about 70 episodes, interviewed some incredible experts all over the world. I'm excited for that. And I'm excited as my brokerage business builds. I really love helping people in the industry, and as I sell more of one product type, I just, like begets like. So I'm just excited for the three of those things to grow. I think that, between those three things, I've got my hands full. And if I can continue to be successful at growing those and adding value to people, that's as much as I can hope for.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Dan. Well, you have quite the extensive background and knowledge in the real estate space, and you are for sure a wealth of knowledge. I'm excited to see how your course performs on the CRE Pro. I think that's going to be great. That's definitely needed. There's a lot of
Yes.
training that's needed out there across the whole real estate space, for sure. So, if people want to learn more about yourself or about your pro course, how do they do that?
So yeah, you can reach out. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn. Dan, last name Lewkowicz, Lewkowicz. I also I've no hesitancy to give out my cell phone if there's any way I can help people. You can call me directly 248-943-2838. Again, 248-943-2838. You can check out our website, creprocourse.com. And if there's any way I can add value, if somebody owns a commercial property and they want to know what it's worth, by all means, please reach out. A big part of my job is I provide complimentary no obligation value proposals to anyone, letting them know what the value of their building is. It's really a great thing to have. And if there's any way I can add value, or if we just want to talk real estate, get in touch, and I'm happy to work with you.
Awesome. Dan, thank you so much for coming. Everybody go check out Dan. He is a wealth of knowledge.